All right, let's finish chapter 20, part 2. Now, what was happening was that the chalk was writing by itself on the chalkboard. Nigel had screamed, "It's writing something! The chalk is writing something." And the first word is Agatha, which, if you can remember, that's the first name of Miss Trunchbull. So let's see what happens next. "What the blazes is this?" yelled the Trunchbull. It had shaken her to see her own first name being written like that by an invisible hand. She dropped Wilfred to the floor. Then she yelled at nobody in particular. "Who's doing this? Who's writing it?" The chalk continued to write. It says, "Agatha, this is Magnus." This is Magnus. Everyone in the place heard the gasp that came from the Trunchbull's throat. "No," she cried. "It can't be. It can't be Magnus." The chalk wrote, "It is Magnus," and it underlined the "is." Remember, Magnus is the name of Miss Honey's dad. And you'd better believe it. Miss Honey at the side of the room glanced swiftly at Matilda. The child was sitting very straight at her desk, her head held high, her mouth compressed, her eyes glittering like 2 stars. The chalk says, "Agatha, give my Jenny back her house." For some reason, everyone now looked at the Trunchbull. The woman's face had turned white as snow, and her mouth was opening and shutting like a halibut out of water, and giving out a series of strangled gasps. "Give my Jenny her wages. Give my Jenny the house, then get out of here. If you don't, I will come and get you. I will come and get you like you got me. I am watching you, Agatha." The chalk stopped writing. It hovered for a few moments, then suddenly it dropped to the floor with a tinkle and broke in 2. This was the last message. That's kind of scary. Wilfred, who had managed to resume his seat in the front row, screamed, "Miss Trunchbull has fallen down! Miss Trunchbull is on the floor!" This was the most sensational bit of news of all of the entire class. They all jumped out of their seats to have a really good look, and there she was, the huge figure of the headmistress, stretched full length on her back across the floor, out for the count. Oh my goodness, look at her on the ground with all her students. Miss Honey ran forward and knelt beside the prostrate giant. "She's fainted," she cried. "She's out cold. Someone go fetch the matron at once." 3 children ran out of the room. Nigel, always ready for action, leapt up and seized the big jug of water. "My father says cold water is the best way to wake someone who's fainted," he said, and with that, he tipped the entire contents of the jug over the Trunchbull's head. No one, not even Miss Honey, protested. As for Matilda, she continued to sit motionless at her desk. She was feeling curiously elated. She felt as though she had touched something that was not quite of this world, the highest point of the heavens, the farthest star. She had felt most wonderfully the power surging up behind her eyes, gushing like a warm fluid inside her skull, and her eyes had become scorching hot, hotter than ever before, and things had come bursting out of her eye sockets, and then the piece of chalk had lifted itself up and had begun to write. It seemed as though she had hardly done anything. It had all been so simple. The school matron, followed by 5 teachers, 3 women, and 2 men, came rushing into the room. "Oh, by golly, somebody's floored her at last," cried one of the men, grinning. "Congratulations, Miss Honey." "Who threw the water over her?" asked the matron. "I did," Nigel said proudly. "Good for you," another teacher said. "Shall we get some more?" "Stop that," the matron said. "We must carry her up to the sick room." It took all 5 teachers and the matron to lift the enormous woman and stagger with her out of the room. Miss Honey said to the class, "I think you'd all better go out to the playground and amuse yourself until the next lesson." Then she turned and walked over to the blackboard and carefully wiped out all the chalk writing. The children began filing out of the classroom. Matilda started to go with them, but as she passed Miss Honey, she paused, and her twinkling eyes met the teacher's eyes. Miss Honey ran forward and gave the tiny child a great big hug and a kiss. All right, my friends, that's the end of chapter 20. Come back tomorrow and we will start chapter 21, the last chapter. We're almost done. All right, my friends, have a good afternoon.